we have great people working at this company who come from all sorts of places around the world.
Wade, again, going further into trauma, you mentioned sort of individual people in San Francisco saying, hey, this isn't working for me. I've actually heard this quite a bit from folks, is that, one of my reports is really struggling, but they hesitate to go into the whys of it and get into their home environment and ask them, well, what's your setup and what's going on with your kids and with your spouse? And because it feels sort of like, that's intrusive, that's their personal life. But it seems to me that in this remote environment, it's the whole person that you're dealing with. And you've got to help them solve their problems, whether they're quote unquote work related or whether they're personal. And I've even talked to folks who have said, well, these three people had real issues. And so what we did was we offered, Alex, I think you did this. We offered them, rent. We will rent you a place elsewhere so that you can, maybe not wherever, Utah, wherever, so that you can have a functional living and working environment, because you clearly can't have that in your place where you are right now. And that has worked like magic. What experience have you seen, either of you there? You may have done it more, Alex, because you're involved in the transition. Wade, you may not have even seen this because your team is already set up for remote.
I think you certainly have to find a way to engage the whole human, like you said. I think that's an important aspect of this. The one thing that I coach a lot of our managers on is, though, don't try and solve problems you're not qualified to solve either. So, if someone has a medical issue or a mental health issue, you're not a therapist, you're not a psychologist, you're not licensed for that type of stuff. Certainly good to be an advocate and a supporter of that person, but you should be helping these people connect to folks that really can help you. And so, through our health insurance and things like that, they have access to some of these services. And we try and, go out of our way to showcase these are normal things. It's totally fine to work with a therapist. That's a very reasonable thing that humans do. And you try and take away the stigma from some of that type of stuff. If someone's struggling because their kids are, in the way and underfoot, it's, I don't have kids. I can't solve that problem, but I can say, hey, I know these other people inside the company that are dealing with the same stuff. Maybe you should go have a conversation with them and sort of sort those things out. So I think you try and help and support and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's you got to be careful not to try and get in and be like, my job as a manager is to solve every problem that you possibly have. It's like, no, I hired a competent person. Your job is to come in here and solve the problems that you're good at. I can support, I can push you to resources that might be able to help you with some of those things. But we really want, or at least at Zapier, we really want people to have agency to solve their own problems. I think that makes a more enduring company.
That makes sense. Matt, you've got 3 kids running around. How do you deal with it?
I go in the back of the house in my son's bedroom where I am now, and it's quiet back here.
Yeah.
There you go.
But luckily I have a house big enough that there's a back of the house.
Right.
So maybe now to take it, I'm Mr. Trauma. Maybe I'll take it up into the joyful side. Wade, there are some massive advantages of being all remote. And right now, and there's also some massive advantages in deciding to be all remote permanently, in the sense that where are you hiring from? Right now, people are sort of in limbo and they're planning to go back to in-person. Their team must live close to the office. If they make the decision to go all remote, now they can start hiring from the entire world. This sounds really good to all hiring managers, but can you just share with us just how good it is? Is it worth it?
I mean, I think it's worth it. We have great people working at this company who come from all sorts of places around the world, places that I didn't even know existed. And some of our best people come from those places. And so to me, that access to a massive talent pool is just so beneficial to our success. And I also think it's just good for us too in other ways. They bring unique perspectives and different ways of looking at problems because they come from different areas. And so I think that's super helpful as well. It will be interesting, I think, to see how the global market evolves, because certainly we've had a head start in sort of doing this stuff and getting good at it for a long time. But if remote really becomes what I think it will become, in part because of COVID, that maybe that advantage we have might shrink in some ways, and we'll have to lean on the fact that like, well, we were the first to do this, and so maybe we're better in some aspects than, you know, a company like Facebook that's just getting started with this. But yeah, it's been a big success for us for sure.
Do you do geo-targeted salaries? Like, do you adjust?
So this is a hard one. We have geo-targeted based on the country that you're in. So we have country-specific ranges that apply across the whole country. So our U.S. ranges are static across the U.S., Canada across Canada, but we pay them in local currencies, and so that way they don't have to deal with currency fluctuations. So if, you know, the dollar changes compared to the pound or to, you know, something else, to the euro, the other person doesn't have to deal with like, oh, I'm all of a sudden I'm getting paid a different amount of money. Like that's kind of annoying. And so we just set the ranges in the country and we pay them based on in the country that they're in.
And are they technically contractors or?
So most of our folks are employees. We set up entities in like our largest spots, but you know, certainly in places where we might only have one or two people, they typically will start out as a contractor. And it also depends on, you know, the local laws and regulations and all this sort of stuff. And so if you start to do this at any amount of scale, you're going to need accountants and lawyers and, you know, people to help navigate all the intricacies of this stuff, because it does get complicated from a just paperwork perspective.
Yeah. Any last thoughts to sum us up? We're almost out of time.
Go for it.
What should we have asked you that we didn't?
I mean, you asked a lot of good questions, dug into a lot of really great stuff. You know, I think one thing that is interesting is, you know, you all talk about this in the book that you write. I think the operating system of a company is a really important part of how you run. And I do think that digital, like remote companies, which I'm going to call digital first companies, have different ways of going about things, different workflows, how things happen. And so leaning into some of that stuff will be interesting. I think as folks move from in an office to online, they'll probably try and replicate, here's what we did in the office, let's try and replicate it online. And that's certainly a good starting spot. But there's things over the years that we figured out are like, this is just how you would work if you just started working this way from the get-go. And it doesn't really look anything like what a office situation would look like. It's just something that exists solely because we use these digital tools to work for. And it's a wholly new thing in and of itself, which I think is another interesting evolution of remote, is realizing that there's these new ways of working that really don't actually mirror what we are used to in the past. And to me, that's pretty exciting to see those changes happen too.
And Wade, where can people find literally the list of what those procedures are? Because that's what people want. They want a checklist, like boom, 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 boom. Have you published that in your external wiki? Or
I think there's a lot of them are in there. Yeah, a lot of them are in there. We probably don't have them listed like in one post in the way that you're asking for. There might be, but there's a lot of good stuff in the wiki. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Wade.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Wade, this was fantastic. Thank you.